Good evening, everyone. It being 7:04 and a quorum of the planning board present, we're going to call this planning board meeting for December 4th to order. Pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023, an act relative to extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency, this meeting will be conducted via remote and in-person participation. Specific information and the general guidelines for remote participation can be found on the town's website. First on our agenda this evening are administrative notes. We start with the minutes for October 9, 2024. Do I have any questions, comments, changes, corrections from the members of the board? Seeing none, I'll ask for a motion.
Motion to approve.
I have a motion.
Second.
And a second. Discussion? Seeing none, I will call the roll. Mr. Donaldson?
Yes.
Mr. Bennett?
Yes.
Mr. Grandy?
Yes.
Myself, yes. Next on our agenda are Form A plans. A4888, Pine Hills LLC, Lot Line Adjustment, Map 77F, Lot S-302, portion of former Lot A338. Any questions from members of the board?
No.
Seeing none, do I have a motion?
Motion to endorse.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, call the roll. Mr. Grandy?
Yes.
Mr. Bennett?
Yes.
Mr. Donaldson?
Yes.
Myself, yes. Next, we have A4889, Catherine D. Withington Revocable Trust, Lot Line Adjustment, Map 79A, Lots 1A-11, 1A-12, 1A-14. Questions, comments from the board? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to endorse.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Discussion? Seeing none, call the roll again. Mr. Donaldson?
Yes.
Mr. Bennett?
Yes.
Mr. Grandy?
Yes.
Myself, yes. Announcements for this evening. The next Master Plan Community Forum will be held tomorrow, December 5th, 6 p.m. at Plymouth South Middle School. This forum is going to be focused on open space, recreation, and climate resiliency, and the climate resiliency consultant, as part of our consulting group, Woods Hole Group, will be present there in order to make a presentation and to answer questions and provide some guidance to the community. Obviously, everyone is welcome and encouraged to attend. We also have 2 Master Plan Community Listening sessions scheduled for December 9th, 6 p.m. That's here at Town Hall, and there will also be a Zoom option available, so that's remote as well as in person. We also have December 16th, 6 p.m. That's in person at West Elementary School. Again, all community residents are welcome to attend any one of the Master Plan meetings or committee meetings, and comment and questions is encouraged. On December 11th at 6 p.m., the Old Colony Planning Council is holding a virtual public meeting on the Safe Streets for All program, which is a regional planning effort. Information about the program and registration can be found on their website at oldcolonyplanning.org. Going to move to our next agenda item tonight, and actually I'm going to move things just a little out of order, so I'm going to start with the public hearing for Pine Hills. The Planning Board and the Town of Plymouth will hold a public hearing at the Plymouth Town Hall, 26 Court Street, Plymouth, Massachusetts, on December 4, 2024, at 7:05 p.m. on the petition of the Pine Hills LLC for approval of a modified definitive subdivision plan entitled Station Drive Land of Land on land located on Station Drive off of Pine Hills Drive within the Pine Hills community, and including the following parcel owned by Pine Hills LLC, as shown on the designated Plymouth Assessor's map dated January 1, 2024. It's map 77D, lot A339. The petitioner or its representatives or any person interested in or desiring to be heard on this matter should appear at the time and place designated. Good evening.
Good evening. Deb Sedaris, here for Pine Hills LLC. Before you this evening is a modified subdivision plan that's fairly simple. We are just, thank you. There we go. So we are basically needing to expand the layout of Station Drive slightly to accommodate some utilities that need to be added into the roadway. So this is the existing Station Drive, and this is where you see this sort of carve out or add on here. This is part of the area that is being widened. Oops. And then that continues on to the second sheet around until it gets to here, and then it goes back to, or ties into the existing Station Drive layout. The reason for it's about a 15-foot widening of the roadway, and it's to accommodate Eversource, who wants to basically complete a loop within, there we go, a loop within the roadway so that there's redundancy to feed electrical service, given all of the, we have the Mark Apartments here, we have the Hanover Apartments here, we have the Avalon Bay Apartments here, and obviously some sort of future development will happen in the parcel here between, let's see if I can do this, between the Mark is here, Hanover's here, and this is the town's fire station here. So all the additional utilities will just make sure there's a double way to feed all of that activity, should there ever be a need to do that. So it's really intended to create some resiliency in their service. So that's really the extent of the request tonight. It's just to add that 15 feet to accommodate those utilities.
Thank you. I'll bring it back to the board. Any questions? Mr. Grandy?
As it is a public comment, I just want to ensure, I would like to hear from the public
Okay,
first.
we can certainly do that first. I'll bring it to staff first. Staff, any?
No, again, this is, as pointed out, very minor changes to the right-of-way, just increasing right-of-way width for utilities, so no other changes, so, yeah, it's pretty innocuous.
Okay. Any member of the public here in the room wishing to be heard on this matter? Seeing no one. Anyone on Zoom wishing to be heard on this matter?
I'm not seeing anyone looking to be recognized.
Okay. Do I have a motion then to close public comment?
Motion to close the public comment.
Second.
Motion and a second. Discussion? None? I'll call the roll. Mr. Grandy?
Yes.
Mr. Bennett?
Yes.
Mr. Donaldson?
Yes.
Myself, yes. Public comment on that matter is closed. Any further discussion from members of the board? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
I have a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion there? Seeing none, I will call the roll. Mr. Grandy?
Yes.
Mr. Bennett?
Yes.
Mr. Donaldson?
Yes.
And myself, yes. Thank you. Next on our agenda this evening is the site plan review for 71 Hedges Pond Road, and that's continued from September 25th, 2024. If the applicant would like to come up.
You ready for me?
All set.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good evening, everyone. For the record, Rob D'Ambroso, D'Ambroso Law. I'm here on behalf of Mr. Pontiff and his special purpose entity, Standish Investment Group, LLC. Eric's here in the audience with me, and so is Kevin Flaherty from our civil engineering firm, Flaherty and Stefani. So we're here before you tonight. Again, I don't want to rehash everything that we've shared over the last few months, but here before you tonight, what we hope is the culmination of a 8-year or so process to develop this site at 71 Hedges Pond Road. That planning and development process was begun by the town in roughly 2016, preceded a town meeting in 2018. Of course, it was approved unanimously. The site was rezoned and earmarked for exactly this type of development, a by right project. So again, Eric has been working on this for 3 years alone. And, we presented this, had a robust process. Obviously, review among town bodies, DPW, its engineering department, fire department. We presented twice to the Cedarville Steering Committee. We appeared twice before you, this board. This is our third appearance. So I think rather than kind of rehash what we've been through, I would just tell you about what's changed since the last time. So last time we were here, Mr. Bennett, had made the suggestion, which I think the board embraced, to try to do something to reduce the amount of material coming off site and raise the grade. Well, we took that to heart. Kevin sharpened his pencil, and we got to work on that and succeeded in submitting about a month ago revised plans that reduced the yardage of material by 80,000 cubic yards, about a 23% reduction in the amount of material coming off site. Subsequently, the peer review consultant, the independent consultant that the town engaged and reported to the town, tendered a recommendation to endeavor to remove the material coming off site by approximately 20%. That was what they thought was feasible for this type of development. So again, we exceeded their recommendation, and we did that in the absence of their recommendation. So we made a good faith effort. Peer review consultant has effectively endorsed that from our perspective. Since that last appearance in front of the planning board, we've agreed to a couple more, I'll call them conditions, concessions, what have you, and we're happy to do it. We're going to limit the earth removal period to 2 years to minimize disruption to the neighborhood. There's going to be a voluntary donation of 10 cents per cubic yard. And again, typically the spirit of that is to provide for any cleanup or repair that's necessary, wear and tear on the road. You've got a nice new road down there on Hedges Pond. And of course, that's separate and additional to the $2 million that's earmarked for the traffic study, traffic improvements that are so desperately needed. That's going to be the $2 million from the sale. When and if it's consummated, will go into an earmarked fund for those local improvements. And again, I think the last thing I would just note, again, when we talk about the context of the earth removal and the site development process, we have, and again, I won't go through it all, we've volunteered to subject the project to virtually all of the conditions that the Zoning Board of Appeals would have the latitude to adopt were this within their jurisdiction. Were the removal so substantial that the ZBA took ownership of the earth removal component. There's a litany of conditions they could seek to impose, and again, we volunteered those because we want this to be a good project for the neighborhood, for the town, for everyone. So again, that's kind of where we've come. That's really what's changed. Again, this is a good unified project for a number of reasons. The fact that it's unified, we'll have a single curb cut onto Hedges Pond rather than a number of curb cuts and separate lots. That's the most logical site for ingress and egress, best sight line, safest exit. Having the single cut allows us to preserve the buffer on Hedges Pond, that 50-foot natural buffer that exists now predominantly throughout the site, rather than clearing that to have a number of separate entrances and separate lots. Again, fire department's comfortable with the circulation, the design. We've got a unified drainage and parking concept. We think we've got synergistic uses that are proposed or contemplated so far. And again, we're able to grade the site in a unified fashion. So, again, just to rehash, we're here, I think, hopefully toward the end of a process that town meeting asked to be undertaken. And we hope that you'll see fit to take it to a vote tonight. And happy to answer any questions, and Kevin can certainly run you through any of the technical details of the revised plan if you'd like.
Thank you, Mr. D'Ambrosio. First, back to staff.
Hi.
Thank you. Good evening. So as we mentioned earlier, this project was before the board twice in September. We heard from them on, I believe it was September 11th. We heard the first initial proposal that was informational. 2 weeks later, it returned for public comment. At that time, the board had requested an independent peer review to take a look at this project and give an opinion as to whether the proposed amount of earth removal was necessary and incidental to the project. We received an initial report from Environmental Partners, who's the independent peer review that was contracted with the town in the end of October. That report asked questions as to whether the applicant had considered reducing that amount and, questioned how they may do that. It did not provide enough specific for the board to gauge a number. So at that time, I asked Environmental Partners to look at this and provide a volume of, a percentage that they would recommend of a reduction that would be reasonable for this project. Environmental partners came back and recommended a 20% reduction in the amount of earth removal would be reasonable. And as you've heard from the applicant, their revised grading plan is a reduction of beyond that. It is almost 23%. I believe the exact number was 22.9. So with that, and looking at what the board has been asked to do, this project was referred by the building commissioner for site plan review for a unified complex. The previous building inspector was of the opinion that this did not need to be automatically assigned to the zoning board, as this was considered to be incidental. However, this board has been in the discussion for an advisory opinion under section 203.2, which is the earth removal regulations, as to, in their opinion, whether they may recommend to the building commissioner whether a special permit or the safeguards should apply. This section of this bylaw does recommend that after that advisory opinion is forwarded to the building commissioner, it's ultimately the building commissioner's determination of whether that would be necessary or not. And it does say that if the building commissioner determines that earth removal occurring on property in the light industrial and commercial districts, of which the Cedarville Village Enterprise District is included, and is necessary and incidental to a lawful end use, which has received all required local permits and state permits for the use that has been fully designed. So ultimately, this will go back to the building commissioner to make that determination. I have prepared for you a draft recommendation advisory report to the building commissioner that does recommend issuance of the site plan review permit for the unified complex and issuance of the permit without requirement of a zoning board of appeals special permit, given that there are conditions included in here that the applicant has voluntarily agreed to that would be within the safeguards and conditions included in this section. I won't go over in detail all of these verbatim because you've had this in your packet, but I do want to highlight a couple of these on the record. The conditions include final landscape plans that would be native plantings, providing a buffer along the perimeter to limit visibility of the site, lighting to be in compliance with the light pollution prevention bylaw, soil stabilization and slight and slope to make sure that any soil disturbance within a reasonable time is maintained, that all areas of excavation and access ways are properly signage and safety fencing along these areas. The earth removal would be limited to 2 years. If it was beyond 2 years, they would need to come back for a modification. The petitioner will need to provide an as-built survey at the completion of the project, certifying that no greater than 270,000 cubic yards, which is the revised proposed amount, has been completed. The petitioner has agreed to voluntarily donate a gift of 10 cents per cubic yard to the project, which is separate and above and beyond what the project purchase and sale agreement that's noted in the history would be a $2 million payment to the town to be held in escrow upon sale of this property from the Plymouth Foundation to the current petitioner, and that would go for roadway improvements at the discretion of the town. In addition, there's a series of earth removal zoning permit minimum conditions and safeguards that are called out here, and those include limitations on heavy vehicle round trips, the amount per day to no more than 40 round trips, hours of operation limiting this work during excavation to be limited from 7 a.m. to 4 p.m., not allowed on state or federal holidays, and on the weekdays through Monday through Friday would be the allowed days. An operation sequencing plan and quarterly inspections with written reports are required to the building commissioner. No greater than 5 acres may be disturbed at any given time, and a cash performance guarantee would be required to the building department. If any of these above noted conditions that are in this report are not adhered to, the building commissioner may at any time cause for a cease work of all excavation and operations on the site. So I'll turn it back to the board to deliberate.
Thank you. At this point, I'm going to open the matter up for some public comment. So as a matter of note, public comment is not required under state law for site plan review, but the board does want to hear from the residents. I'd like to start off with a show of hands, people in the room who would like to speak. Thank you. Can I get a sense from online? I see some people who hands online. Everyone online who'd like to speak, if you could virtually or physically, if you wish, raise your hand so we can get a sense. Okay, thank you. Public comment is limited to 3 minutes per person, and as we've already had a full meeting of public comment, I am going to hold people to that. I'm only going to recognize people once, so when you come up, make your say, and when you're finished, thank you for your participation. While we do want to encourage everybody to speak, we have no limitations on that, I would ask people to recognize that it's a lot of people in a long meeting, and so if what you have to say has already been said, understand we have heard from the community. We're not restricting people from offering their opinions, but I'd ask you to consider whether or not you need it. And I don't have a problem with anyone coming up and just simply saying, I agree with the last 4 people, but that's up to you. I only ask you to be considerate of everybody else. I also ask that the audience refrain from interrupting. That means no applause, no jeers, no disruption of any time, no statements, no yelling. Everyone, whether you agree or disagree with what's being said, has the right to be heard and heard respectfully. No one is going to tell you what to say, but everyone is entitled to the same courtesy. If that does not occur, public comment will be closed. I don't want to do that, but at the same time, again, respect is something that we really do want to have happen here. So with that, I'm going to ask first for those who are residents of Cedarville who wish to speak to raise their hand and be recognized. Mr. Williams.
My name's Don Williams. I live at 42 Cartersbridge Road. I've spoken against these things before. I'd like to take a slightly different tack and speak against sand and gravel removal. And I'd like to propose that the town, in the interest of good planning, propose a moratorium on sand and gravel removal until more is known. Until more is known about it. The proponents say of these projects, and this is applicable to the next discussion also, the proponents say that there is no evidence for sand removal causing water quality issues. We know that from the experts who do water quality studies that our soil slows down phosphorus movement because of the iron present in it. And the phosphorus is the main pollutant for fresh water for all 400 of our ponds in the town. So I think it behooves us to be very considerate and thoughtful about what's going on with potential harm to our water supply. We have blooms that are caused by this of both algae and cyanobacteria. And it's the iron that slows this permeation into the water below down. So it's logical that more sand and consequently more iron would be a better protection for our water supply. Now, our water supply is limited to what's in the aquifer, and if the aquifer is polluted, we will have to go to drilling through the bedrock or desalinization, which is much more expensive. Now, I've had a chemistry career, and I've led some problem-solving groups. And one of the things that we do at the end of the problem-solving group is we ask the question, what's the risk if we've got it wrong? There's not a whole lot in the literature about the effect of removing sand on water quality, but that doesn't mean we should not consider it or find out more about it before we rush off and allow almost an unlimited, unimaginable number of cubic yards of sand to be removed. It seems that whatever our need here, that our need here is a proof one way or the other, and we don't have that right now.
Mr. Williams, that's 3 minutes. I'm going to give you another 30 seconds, but please wrap up.
I will. We owe it to Plymouth to be right about the sand. And number two, we have petitioners to prove, we need petitioners to prove that there is no effect before we do any further allowing of sand removal. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in the room who's a resident of Cedarville or the area who wishes to speak? Yes, first, and then you're next.
Good evening. I'm Sybil Holland, Precinct 8. As a town member, sitting in town meeting, I know how important Plymouth's budget is, and we're always looking for ways to make more money. We need more money. We have a lot of demands, and they're difficult to meet financially. And I'm worried that in a contest of environmental concerns and perhaps even health concerns, as well as just the quality of life of people in the area of Ellisville, Cedarville, who would be impacted, whether when those come up against money for the town, that all of these mentions of concessions, financial concessions, I just want to draw a line under that and say that worries me, because it's very tempting to take the money, but I feel the consequences are very deep and long, and we could regret this. I agree with Mr. Williams that we need more study. Thank you.
Thank you. You had your hand up. Please come forward.
Hello, everyone. My name is Elena, and I live on Pine Mountain Road. As a teacher, I understand how to work on a tough budget, and we still strive. So money is not important, really, unless we are just surviving on the barely minimum. And I would definitely not exchange money for this beauty of nature that people live in here in our neighborhood. And a lot of people make choice whether to live somewhere closer to Boston where it's easier to find a job, or to move far away and enjoy the nature and to have your family here, and we are ready to commute 1 hour, 2 hours back and forth just because we love this neighborhood and we will continue to live over here. We do not want to see the disaster that is happening right now in Forestdale. If you go there during the summer months or the warm months, the PA Landers site there, it's full of dust. Whenever there is a major rain, you cannot go on a sedan car on the Route 130. I'm not a road specialist, but obviously this construction site, it has to do with the huge flooding that is happening over there. And last thing I would like to say, I know that that area with Hedges Pond Road and State Road is already a major traffic disaster, and everyone, if you see the big plan map, everyone is liking the idea of putting some kind of rotary or traffic signs or any kind of traffic lights there. But the trucks that are going from there would make it even worse, and everyone will get stuck, and it will be even more commute if anyone is going further away on major roads. So it's definitely not happening in our neighborhood. It's not a good idea. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Take the shortcut. Hi, my name is Joyce Bocci. I live in Section 8? Precinct. Section 8. That could be really a problem. So yes, I agree with all the former people, what they have to say here, and I just wanted to, one extra thing is, this is a neighborhood. This is a residential neighborhood where the people have moved here to take the water directly from the ground into their homes because they wanted nice, clean, fresh water without the fluoride and whatever else. They wanted to be able to walk out and walk their dogs into woods, into woodland. They wanted nature around them. And now we have a strip mining job that is going to take that away. And I think the neighborhood should have a definite say in this. And I just wanted the planning board to know how serious we are, that regardless of what your decision is, we as a community will come together to fight this somehow, some way. Thank you.
Thank you. Right. Anyone else from Cedarville? Yes, please come forward.
Hi, my name is Carol Biggs. I live in Buckskin Path. I'm new to this, so I'm sorry if I'm repeating anything or if it's out of line in any way. I do think that looking at these projects that are proposed, and I listened to the meetings that you're telling me that are upcoming about regional plans, master plans, resiliency, and I just think it's important to think about these things in overall terms, not one project here or one project there or the short term. How do these fit in with our master plans? How do they fit in with climate resiliency? I personally don't believe that they do, but I'm hoping that you're taking all of that into consideration rather than just the short term of what this might bring to the town. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Pat Adelman. I sit on the Cedarville Steering Committee, and I don't see anyone here, so I wanted to highlight the reasons why the Cedarville Steering Committee voted 5-0 not to recommend this project. We had an issue with the gravel removal. The estimated $12.20 per metric ton seemed to be very profitable compared to what the town would benefit from that. The 80 trips a day is very problematic. And the proposed, whatever it's going to be, an ice skating rink, a lumber yard. The warehouse is 20% larger than the Amazon warehouse at exit 17. And plus the added traffic with the Sagamore Bridge project. And the bylaws that provide incidental, that we cited case history where Old Colony Council versus the Zoning Board of Appeals in Plymouth considered that incidental, considering the amount of gravel to be removed, the duration of the excavation, and the monies to be realized. So for all those reasons, we, the Cedarville Steering Committee, voted 5-0 not to approve this project. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the Cedarville area in the room? Okay. At this point, I'm going to go to the Cedarville area on Zoom. So again, just people from the Cedarville area. If you're from the Cedarville area on Zoom, let us know, and we'll recognize you and unmute you.
If anyone on Zoom is from the Cedarville area, if you could maintain your hand raised for those who wish to speak who are not from Cedarville, we will get to you a little bit later. Thank you. We'll go with Michael Ferrugia. I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself.
Hello, my name is Michael Ferrugia. I'm here with my fiance, Kira Berg. We are residents of Tara's Way in Cedarville. We wanted to echo the concerns raised by the other individuals who have spoken this evening, who are opposed to this project, and particularly those raised by Mr. Williams, first individual who spoke. We appreciate all the people who have come out and have done the research in opposition to this project. We share those concerns, and we are also opposed to the project. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, I'm going to ask Tess Brennan to unmute. Tess, if you could accept the request to unmute yourself, please.
Sorry about that. My name is Tess Brennan. I am also on the Cedarville Steering Committee, and I would just like to add, thank you, Pat, for speaking. I couldn't be there tonight because I'm homesick, but I would like to add that we had multiple meetings regarding these projects. And in the years I've been on the Cedarville Steering Committee, we have never had the turnout that we had regarding both of these projects. We've heard from hundreds of people in Cedarville, and not one of them supported these projects. Everybody, I think, is very frightened that the amount of traffic, the added pollution, the noise, the topographical degradation will really destroy our little village and will just destroy our quality of life. And it's not something that can be repaired. Once it's gone, it's gone. And everyone I've spoken to in Cedarville, and that has been many, many people, agrees with that position and is adamantly opposed to these projects.
Thank you. Brian Harrington, if you could unmute yourself, please.
Thank you. As I'm sure has been stated many times, Cedarville is a traffic nightmare for many parts of the day. This would totally exacerbate it. But the point I really wanted to get at is the approach here seems to be to not be cautious in causing potential harm to the watershed. And the approach often is we'll do something, and if it becomes a problem, then we'll try and deal with it. Well, this is a clear case of where the problem should be known. Potential problems to water supply should be known before the project is allowed to go forward. And that's the major point I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else online from the Cedarville area? Seeing no one, I'm going to bring it back to the room and open it up to anyone else. Who else would like to speak? Anyone else? Yes, come forward.
My name is Meg Sheehan. I'm an attorney with Community Land and Water Coalition, Lifetime Roots in Plymouth, and I am vehemently opposed to this project as is our organization, the planning board should find that the special permit is required under section 203-3C. The development plan does not meet the minimum standards and conditions set forth in section 4 or the zoning permit minimum conditions, and nor could the project be conditioned in any way to meet those. First of all, the bylaw requires there be a lawful end use. There is no lawful end use because the Plymouth Foundation does not lawfully own this property. It is barred from selling it. The land was sold unlawfully by the town for $1 to the Plymouth Foundation that's now selling it for $4 million with some vague promise of putting $2 million towards some future unknown traffic mitigation. The Planning Board and the Plymouth Foundation both misled the public in 2018 and misled the town meeting. There was a promise that 140 acres would be put into conservation in exchange for the use of this property for commercial or industrial uses. That land is not in conservation, despite what the applicant's attorney represented both to the Conservation Commission and to this board. I'd like to point out that the Plymouth Foundation is a private foundation that is making money off of sand and gravel mining and has generated revenue according to its tax returns by mining the abutting land at Cantor Court. And this is another money-making activity by the foundation, which is a 501c3. It has 7 directors, 3 of them are town employees. That town employee was the planning director, who was sitting right here, has a conflict of interest because he participated in changing the zoning in order to zone this prior conservation land as an industrial use. He had a vote on the Plymouth Foundation as to whether the foundation would move ahead with buying this land and developing it. That is a blatant conflict of interest. 2 other town officials are also on the board as officers, and 2 other town officials are directors, the chair of the chair of the board of directors and the town manager. There's no escrow account that was required when the town sold the land to the Plymouth Foundation. We've done a public records request, and there's no escrow.
That's 3 minutes, please. 30 seconds to wrap up.
I'd also like to point out that the chair has prevented our organization from playing a video to show what a unified complex is in the planning board's discretionary view, and you can go drive by yourself on Route 3 and see what a unified complex is on Collins Ave in the industrial park, where there's been a mining operation that's been going on for several years, and the permit is expired, and you have done nothing. Thank you.
Thank you. No, no. Anyone else? Anyone else in the room wish to speak? Anyone else we have on Zoom? Oh, I'm sorry. Did you wish to speak? Please come forward, and then we'll go to Zoom.
Thank you. My name's Nick Ramirez. My wife, Angelica, and I moved here about 3 years ago. We live off of State Road at 1930. I'm 34 years old. I work in tech. Have a pretty high demanding job, and I work remote. But I'm finding it pretty difficult to keep track of all the different sand mining projects going on in the area. What I'll tell you is that I'm pretty fed up about all of it. And with the additional time that I have, that I don't have to spend commuting, I intend to be more active in this endeavor to continue preventing initiatives such as sand gravel mining in the area. Thank you.
Thank you. One more time then. Anyone else in the room? Yes, please.
My name's Harold Tincher, 15 Salt Marsh Lane, Plymouth. My wife and I bought our house 35 years ago because we wanted a quality of life. And it's interesting, do any of you gentlemen live in Cedarville?
We're not going to answer your questions. I'm happy to talk later, but
Have you
please,
driven through Cedarville in the last 30 years? It's like Dodgem cars. When you're a young boy, you used to drive in the Dodgem cars. Your life is not in your own hands when you drive through Cedarville now. And can you imagine how this is going to be multiplied with an activity of a venture like this? It makes the quality of life seem far and distant as opposed to how it should be present. That's the first issue. The second one is, I'm a capitalist and I believe in the free enterprise system, but when I see an issue like this where 1, 2, 3 individuals are going to take advantage of an entire community without giving a damn about the quality of water, the quality of life, the traffic patterns, and the enjoyment that the people have that live there. So my question is, where is the sanity in a decision like this? Is the sanity for a few opposed to the many? That's my question. So, thank you.
thank you. Sir, you had raised your hand. Please come forward.
Through the chair, my name's Paul Smith. I live in Ellisville, a tiny little hamlet in Cedarville, the north end of Ellisville Road. We draw our water in our home from a well. That well and our neighbors' wells are all on the edge of the aquifer that are outside of the town supplied water, which had to be put in after the filling of the landfill in Cedarville. And I would think that that was done prior to this. The members of this board, Mr. Grandy might remember it. But when the landfill was tested, it ended up having to be a Superfund site for the state of Massachusetts. And well recorded, it was capped, responsibly so, and everyone downstream of the aquifer, which flows to the south and flows to the east, okay, got town water at great expense to the town. Now, this waste site is in close proximity and just downstream of where this excavation is going to take place. And it's going to bear and remove filtering, okay, of the source of the water, the rainfall. What's going to happen to that tainted aquifer? Well, we're right on the edge of that aquifer. And I would hope that besides the pristine appearance, smell of the water, besides the quality of life, the safety of the inhabitants would be a concern to the board. And out of that concern, I have not seen this addressed nor proposed to be addressed. And I would appreciate that attention. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Lydon.
Steve Lydon, Precinct 17. I lived in Plymouth for over 40 years. I've been traveling Bourne Road, Halfway Pond Road, Long Pond Road, Hitches Pond Road, up to Cedarville. My daughter lives in Cedarville. I travel that at least 3-4 times a day. I experienced the 440,000 yards that were taken off Bourne Road. Never was any traffic problems with the trucks coming out. Never any problems with school buses or the schools or any safety problems. The problem is the traffic is Ponds of Plymouth, Red Brook. You have all these extra vehicles coming down. So it's not the trucks, and to me, the only time traffic is really bad is on the weekends during the summertime when they use Halfway Pond, Bourne Road, and Hedges Pond Road, and Long Pond Road as cut-throughs. But other than that, I don't see any big problem with the traffic. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Jeff Cohen, Treetop Way. I didn't come here to speak, but let's be realistic. The traffic is a nightmare, not because of the ponds of Plymouth. The trucks. I've had 2 rims on one of my cars break in the past 4 years. The potholes, they've already repaved a few times. It's a nightmare down there. I'm a good driver, and let's just say it's entertaining driving through Cedarville Center. That's the most polite way I can put it. I like it. I do like it. I like video games. I like stuff like this. It's challenging, though, and it's only going to get worse. I've been living in Plymouth for close to 50 years now. I've been in Cedarville for 30 years. I bought my house down there because it's just forest everywhere. There's nothing down there until now. That project on Long Pond Road is just out of control. And now they want to come all the way over to pretty much State Road with it. That's just insane to even fathom. So, yeah, I'm a little nervous. I'm not going to lie, I'm nervous. Quality of life is going to go downhill quickly, I think, in Cedarville. And I'm not one of those not in my backyard guys. Well, I mean, I guess I am kind of. I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that, but it's a residential neighborhood. I mean, we're not we're not a sandpit. We're a residential neighborhood. I don't want to keep going over the same thing. I'll start babbling, but this is just insane. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, last call now for anyone in the room. Yes. Yes.
Good evening, and thank you. Bill Lawrence, I live on State Road as well, been here for about 10 years. I'm going to take a little bit of a different tack because I was at the last meeting and I saw the plot that's going to be taken down, I guess, where the dirt and gravel will be taken out. And I'd like to know a couple of things. First of all, the city fathers really has to learn, or we should be taking a long-term, and this would require an EPA study because we really need to get solid evidence as to what's happening with the aquifer water. One of the beautiful things about living in New England is we've never had a water problem, and we are having one now. And I think we can solve it within ourselves, but we have to protect the natural land that we've got in order to make that stay as it is or better. The other thing is that, I mentioned this in the last meeting, I think that we produce an awful lot of cranberries, and I've seen signs on Ocean Spray when they say that we just don't want any more. And I think it would behoove the city fathers as well as the planners here to do a real solid marketing study, a demand study, to see whether we need another bog. And I don't know whether that would prove to be the case. Also, it just seems to me that I look at bogs, I don't know, I'm not a farmer, but I don't know how far down they plan to go. But
Mr. Lawrence, I don't mean to interrupt you, but this is not the project seeking to expand for a cranberry bog. This is a different project.
So it is a project then to sell sand and gravel. That's the project.
This is
because I know the last meeting we were told that they wanted to expand and put a new bog, but I don't know whether that's actually warranted or whether the amount of gravel that's going to be taken out as a product is justified by the increasing in the farming output that's going to be there. And just do a demand study, do a market study to see if it's worth that. Unless that's not really the purpose here. The purpose here is just to strip mine the land and take it away, which has taken millions of years to be there, and it can't be replaced. And what is the economic, environmental impact on that? I think that should be at least a part. And to see if it is a study to increase the amount of produce that the farmer can get from this, then we should at least be able to know whether or not that's a viable market or not. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, at this point, I'm going to move it to online, to people who want to speak online.
Catherine Harrelson, please unmute yourself.
Hi, thank you very much for having me tonight. My name is Catherine Harrelson. I'm a member of Community Land and Water Coalition, a Plymouth-based nonprofit organization. Tonight, I have the honor of reading into the record a letter prepared by the Herring Pond Wampanoag tribe in regards to this project. This letter is addressed to Richard Quintal Jr., Chair, Select Board, Town of Plymouth, Stephen Bolton, Chair, Planning Board, Town of Plymouth. Comments on Standish Investment Group Proposal, 71 Hedges Pond Road, Plymouth. Dear Mr. Quintal, members of the Select Board, Mr. Bolton, members of the Planning Board, and Building Commissioner. We are writing to express our deep concerns regarding the proposed commercial development on the 33-acre site known as 71 Hedges Pond Road in Plymouth. This site lies at the heart of the Wampanoag homelands and holds profound historical and cultural significance. Our historic reservation lands, post-allotment, which previously contained 3 separate parcels, mostly in Plymouth but partly in Bourne, which in total was about 3,000 plus acres, namely the Great Lot, about 2,600 acres, the Meeting House Lot, about 200 acres, and the Herring River Lot, known to the tribe in the 21st century as the Valley, about 400 acres. The parcel was set aside for the tribe in the 1600s and was part of the original reservation lands of the Herring Pond Wampanoag tribe, known as the Great Lot. We strongly oppose the development as proposed by E.J. Pontiff and Standish Investment Group. The site plans dated July 30th, 2023 by Flaherty and Stefani indicate an extensive excavation starting from the top of the 150-foot hill and digging approximately 90 feet deep across the 33-acre site. This plan would result in a 30-acre excavation with steep 90-foot slopes. Additionally, the developer's letter, dated July 10, 2024, mentions a disturbance of about 30 acres, including the removal of 350,000 cubic yards of sand and gravel. Laws and policies give us, as Indigenous people, an inherent right to be not only consulted when human activities harm our ancestral lands and heritage. Under these state and federal laws, Indigenous peoples have the right to free, prior, and informed consent on territories and resources which they have traditionally owned, occupied, or otherwise used or acquired. So we call upon you to adhere to the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, UNDRIP, which was endorsed by the State Department in 2010. Article 32, number 1, Indigenous peoples have the right to determine and develop priorities and strategies for the development or use of their lands or territories and other resources. Number 2, states shall consult and cooperate in good faith with the Indigenous peoples concerned through their own representative institutions in order to obtain their free and informed consent prior to the approval of any project affecting their lands or territories and other resources, particularly in connection with the development, utilization, or exploitation of mineral, water, or other resources.
That's 3 minutes and 15 seconds. Could you please wrap up?
Thank you. Number 3, states shall provide effective mechanisms for just and fair redress for any such activities, and appropriate measures shall be taken to mitigate adverse environmental, economic, social, cultural, or spiritual impact. This approach to land development is unnecessary and threatens the historical and cultural fabric of our ancestral homelands. At a minimum, we request that the town mandates a comprehensive archaeological survey conducted by an independent third-party archaeologist selected and overseen by the Section 106 process, tribal historic preservation officers, and the Wampanoag people, funded by the developer.
Okay.
It is a
I'm gonna have to cut you off there.
Cultural and historical artifacts that are at risk of being irreparably damaged if the project proceeds without thorough examination. The land in question and its preservation is crucial for maintaining our heritage and history. We urge you to consider the importance of this site and the irreversible impact this development could have. Very truly yours, Melissa A. Ferretti, Chairwoman, Herring Pond Wampanoag Tribe.
Thank you. Anyone else online?
Bill Abbott.
I believe I'm unmuted. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to speak here. And first, I'm a town meeting member in the adjacent precinct, Precinct 16. And we use Hedges Pond Road daily, certainly to get to Cedarville. I'm also an attorney and 50-year town meeting member. When this project came before town meeting a couple of years ago, nowhere under the sun did we think this was going to result in a 2-year sand and gravel operation with 40 trucks a day starting at 7 a.m. With the impact that would have on the neighborhood. No way did we think that. And contrary to what the attorney said at the beginning of this hearing, that was not the type of use we had any idea would be put on this site. I also have to say that my office and I've handled an appeal of a similar permit just up the street in Ellisville, and successfully blocked an operation there, which again was to remove a hill at great disruption to the local community, 40 truck trips a day going through Cedarville, and to the Board of Appeals, to their credit, found that that would be a abuse to the neighborhood, an adverse effect upon the neighborhood, and an impact and create jeopardy to the people, to the vehicles, the trucks that were going to be carrying out this use. So I'm asking you to send this project to the Board of Appeals that definitely needs a special permit. And and I have great trust in the Board of Appeals usually in doing the right thing like they did up in Indian Head, just up the street on 3A. The project needs to have those kind of protections put in there, and the specific one of a specific permit is that it cannot be a hazard to pedestrians or vehicles. And they couldn't make that case up there, and they're not going to be able to make it here. And it would have an adverse effect upon the neighborhood. And you can't issue a special permit when it has that effect. Let me just say one final thing. The planner said that the town was relying on their 203-2C, which said that the commissioner could not have to go with the special permit route if the earth removal was occurring on a property zoned, in this case, an industrial type zone. It is, but it also said that it had to have an end use that has received, in the past tense, all received local and state permits for the use, which had been fully designed. I don't believe these 3 buildings have been fully designed or permitted or anything yet. So I don't see how you can't make that determination. It's right straightforward in our bylaw. Therefore, please issue your opinion saying that this should require a special permit and give the neighbors and the residents the kind of protections which our zoning bylaw provides. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else online wishing to be heard? Okay, seeing no one, I'll bring the petitioner back. Yes.
I might only need 2, but I'd like to yield the floor to Kevin Flaherty to address some of the environmental concerns. So I just want to try to address some of the concerns that were raised here. I mean, first and foremost, no one wants to diminish water quality in Plymouth. So, to the extent those concerns were legitimate, we share them, but again, I think that just a couple things briefly. Groundwater separation, groundwater came up several times. I've pointed this out previously, so real quick, and I'll let Kevin give you a more technical explanation. Over 90% of this site, approximately, we're increasing groundwater separation, okay? That's a fact. That's how the project is engineered. So the vast majority of the site, increased groundwater separation. So again, that speaks for itself, I think. A lot of talk about, how could this happen? This isn't what the use should be. That ship respectfully has sailed. The use was determined by town meeting, which is a process that everyone could participate in. A lot of people have said they've lived here for 30 years, 50 years, been town meeting members, went to the town meeting. It was unanimously approved. So again, these are by right uses. This isn't even a special permit that my client's seeking relief for to exercise some extraordinary use. These are by right uses that the town contemplated and approved unanimously at town meeting. Again, it kind of goes without saying, and I've hit it before, and just as a reminder, in 2018, the Cedarville Steering Committee unanimously supported this rezoning. The planning board unanimously supported it, and so the open space committee, and then all the town meeting members unanimously supported it. So this was as open and transparent of a rezoning as is possible. Again, it just doesn't hold water for people to say, we didn't see this coming, or this use is inappropriate. Along those same lines, several folks said this is a residential neighborhood. That's just not correct. The Cedarville Village Enterprise District is an industrial commercial zone, and in fact, residential development within this zoning district is forbidden. You can't do it with a special permit. You just can't do it, period. So, it's an illogical argument to make. And again, I think that's, traffic, I think, is the last item that came up on several occasions. I don't think anyone would disagree that Cedarville needs traffic improvement. For probably 20 years, there's been talk about improving traffic. Well, the reality is this is how traffic's going to improve. The sale of this property is going to dedicate $2 million to actually start doing the engineering work to resolve that bad intersection. That's why this was approved in 2018. So again, if you want the traffic to improve, this is the avenue. So again, that's worth mentioning. You guys okay? So again, those are all points I wanted to raise, and I'd like to let Kevin speak about the groundwater on a more technical basis. May I yield?
No. Ma'am, I'm sorry. I made it very clear at the beginning. This is the process. I also, again, asked you not to interrupt. None of you were interrupted when you spoke. You were given the same courtesy that I've asked. Again, this is not how we do things. You don't get to this is not mob rule. And in the event that you want it to be mob rule, I will go ahead and recess. I'll close the comment, and I'll move it straight to a vote. And I don't think you folks want that. I think you want the board to hear all of the information and make an informed decision. Mr. Savani.
I'll just be real brief. The site is not a complete cut. The low point of this is at elevation 26. When it's at its finished grade, it's going to be at elevation 62. So we're actually providing another 36 feet of filtration before any groundwater table or anything's encountered. We're also going to be, when the site's developed, have proprietary devices and all sorts of water quality units to treat the asphalt and treat whatever comes into the drainage systems that are proposed on the plan. So by doing so, we're actually, again, separating by 36 feet from where the groundwater is currently being encountered into the depression to 36 feet above with material to create any sort of additional filtration that will benefit the groundwater in the area that way. So that's all I have to say. Groundwater came up a lot, but this is not the project where we're cutting in to getting closer to the groundwater. We're actually creating more separation. So thank you.
Thank you. At this point, I'm going to bring it back to the board for questions for the applicant. I'm going to start with Mr. Bennett.
So, Mr. Flaherty, thank you
No.
for answering my question in advance.
Excuse me, Tim. No, I'm sorry. The time for public comment is closed. I indicated that. I'm going to say it one last time. Please do not interrupt the board. The board is now deliberating. It's its time. Thank you. Ms. Sheehan, if you wish to interrupt further, I'm going to ask you to leave. I've asked you politely, twice now. Do not interrupt. It is now time for the board to deliberate. Thank you. Mr. Bennett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, Mr. Flaherty actually touched upon, no, you don't need to get up, Kevin. I took a very close look at the plans, printed them all out full size and reviewed them. And seeing that the actual exposure of the groundwater is actually being reduced. And the science, the engineering, the facts say that. It's the truth. The Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection says that a groundwater separation of 5 feet between the bottom of a septic system full of phosphorus and nitrogen is suitable for a septic system to be constructed within 5 feet of groundwater. What we're looking at here is an increase from 0 to nearly 5 times that requirement. So I think the argument that this is going to impact groundwater is moot. There's no interception of the groundwater table. This is not a tailwater recovery pond. This is actually covering up and protecting more the groundwater with treatment of all of the runoff. If you look at the construction details, the proprietary structures that Mr. Flaherty mentioned actually treat the runoff to be even better quality than it was when it came out of the sky. So I don't subscribe to the fact or the supposition that there's a conspiracy going on here. I think that, well, I think I'll leave my comments there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bennett. Mr. Donaldson.
So I've been to the site. I've seen the plans, and I understand that this project is, even though there is some sand and gravel that's being removed, and technically this site for it to be properly developed is actually a fill. I'm in totally agreement with everything that Mr. Bennett has said as well, and so I will not repeat those statements. And that's all I have. I through this process, I have been on and off the fence in regards to this project, but I can only go with the data and my own eyes and observation of the site to form my decision. And I'll just leave it there.
Thank you, Mr. Donaldson. Mr. Grandy.
Thank you, through the chair. And to a comment, has any of you people up here, being the planning board, been in Cedarville? I'm in Cedarville all the time. I was on the Cedarville Steering Committee. I was a town meeting representative. I understand the importance of our aquifer and the protection of the residents in any area of town, whether that be in Cedarville, Manamet, North Plymouth. It's important that we protect the pedestrians, residents, the water, the quality of life. Everything is important. There was a vote taken at town meeting to change the zoning of this property. Of course, I don't believe that anybody envisioned that 350,000 cubic yards would be removed from this particular site. But if you looked at the elevations back when it was going through its zoning changes, the elevations, you look at the site, it's a bowl. The site is being raised, and we just heard about the protection of the aquifer and increasing it from elevation 26, don't quote me on that, up to 52 or 60, somewhere in that vicinity. When town meeting voted this and the Cedarville Steering Committee also approved the zoning here, it was also the understanding of the traffic situation, and it's been going on for 25 years since I've been involved in town politics, whether it was a town meeting member or a Cedarville Steering Committee member, Rose Advisory, the list goes on. We're looking to improve the traffic situation in that Cedarville Center. So when this was voted, it was understood that $2 million was going to be going toward the improvements for the traffic in Cedarville that we all complain about, and I have personally been complaining about for 25 years. So I have to weigh the facts of everything that comes into play here on the reports that we receive from staff, from the engineers, listen to the residents, obviously. It's a very important decision, but the decision being made here is to recommend something to the building commissioner, whether it should go to the Zoning Board of Appeals under a special permit. The requirements that are listed within our report here this evening are the same requirements that a Zoning Board of Appeals would probably assess and put on the requirements to do this project. So I would ask staff, are there any other things that the Zoning Board would add that are not currently in the report that we have here this evening?
One item that is not included in this report that would impact the project is excavation within 50 feet of a lot line.
Okay? But in the language of this decision, also clean out areas, monitoring. I think the monitoring you have in here already as far as that's concerned. So if it went to the Zoning Board of Appeals, would there be more studies? Would there be wells dug to check the aquifer and if there's any plume coming from the cap landfill?
There would be no additional studies.
No additional studies done by the Zoning Board. I don't know who's talking, but please. It's kind of interfering with what I'm discussing with you. If you could just wait to talk, you had your opportunities to speak, please. So let me continue. The vote of town meeting of 2018, am I correct with that?
Correct.
And it was unanimous.
That's correct.
Cedarville Steering Committee, vote to rezone. So they knew, and everybody knew, there was going to be some type of development that happens here. Back when it was voted by town meeting. And the Board of Selectmen were also involved in the whole process. So this is a piece of property that was looking to be developed. And the Board of Selectmen, working with the Regional Economic Development Corporation, created this lot. And I would ask the question also of the 140 acres, was it put into conservation?
Yes.
Yes. We heard a comment that it wasn't, but it is into conservation. So we traded 140 acres and put them into conservation to create this developable lot through the zoning. So I think that's an important aspect to consider. And $2 million goes a long way as far as traffic improvements down in Cedarville. It will get the ball started. The state, no, please, sir.
2018, $2 million is a lot different than...
Sir, I'm speaking, please.
Sir, if you continue, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. Do not yes, I have, and yet somehow you still seem to be interrupting the proceedings. You were given an opportunity to speak. It is now our turn. That is how this works. That is the way a civil society behaves. There's been a recent rash of lack of decorum. Sir, enough. Please. There's been a rash of lack of decorum in this room, not just today, but in other nights. I take it as a personal affront because I've expanded public comment. There was no requirement that there be any public comment. That's the discretion of the chair per state law. I, in my discretion, opened this up to public comment. I heard from everyone who wanted to be heard from. And to continue to interrupt afterwards is merely an insult to the process. You should be embarrassed if you do that. Don't feel emboldened by it. It certainly does not accomplish your purpose. My apologies, Mr. Grandy. Please continue.
Okay. Sir, I understand what you're trying to say. Yes. $2 million 8 years ago was a lot different than $2 million today. That's totally understandable, true, and I agree. The same thing falls true for the 10 cents a yard. How long have we been using the 10 cents a yard figure for donations to the town? 10 years ago?
I don't have that information.
Oh, I believe it was a while ago, and I heard someone said it, or in one of these reports it mentioned it. So costs have increased, obviously, per the gentleman's comments that we heard earlier. So again, I think it's important to realize that town meeting voted, Cedarville Steering Committee voted, and through all the reports I see, I think it's important this site does get developed, but it's not our absolute decision. The building commissioner will make that decision whether he feels it's going to go to the Zoning Board of Appeals or not. So with that, I don't want to take too much more time. I could go on for quite a while, but I won't, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Grandy. There are certain things that this board may and may not do. We've been asked to hold things until there's a moratorium on sand and gravel removal for further study. I agree, further study is a great idea. It's important and it should be done. But there is no moratorium in place. We can't enforce something that does not exist. That's not within our power. We've been asked to refuse to recognize the sale of the property. This is not a court of law. This property was transferred in 2018, if not earlier. We don't have the authority to refuse to recognize that. That's not this board's province. We've received a separate letter from the one that was read to us tonight from the Mashpee Wampanoags, who I wish to congratulate on their recognition from the state, which is long overdue. In their letter, they have sought the transfer of the property back to the Wampanoag tribe. We do not have the authority to do that. We've also received comments from people, including tonight, which essentially say that we shouldn't grant this application because we don't like the uses that are being proposed. I'm not unsympathetic to that argument. But again, those uses were approved by town meeting. As the applicant has pointed out, they are approved uses. Your representatives unanimously approved those uses. It is not for this board to override that. We have no authority to say, no, even though our zoning bylaw allows this, we're going to say no. That's not something we can do. There are two things that we've been asked to consider tonight. First is this idea of a unified complex. Not much has been said about it, but it was mentioned, so I'm going to raise it. Unified complex under 203-1D3 of the zoning bylaw asks whether or not a project is better off as a single parcel, multiple buildings on a single parcel with shared parking, as opposed to separate parcels. It is for this board, in its discretion, to consider the application, to consider the two alternatives and determine which one is better. I believe this project does work better as a unified complex. It provides for access at Hedges Pond Road at a single point, the point where visibility for traffic is best, not for multiple entry and exit ways, which I think would create a greater traffic problem. It allows for more screening to remain rather than being cut down for entry and access ways. And it means that the proposed uses, those three uses that were presented to us as part of the application, the warehouse, the skating rink, and the lumber yard, cannot be changed even to another approved use under the zoning bylaw without coming back to this body. So it's not something that they can do. It can't be a bait and switch. They can't turn around and say, I want approval for a skating rink. Oh, nope, now it's going to be something else. They have to come back to us, no matter what. Those are greater protections afforded by a unified complex than if it weren't. So based upon that, I'm comfortable with the unified complex. Regarding the earth removal, we are asked to consider whether or not the proposal meets certain safeguards under Section 2032C3 and C4 of the zoning bylaw. In terms of the quote-unquote reasonableness of the sand review, this board asked for a peer review. It's not something that happens every time. We specifically asked for it. In fact, we refused to go forward until we had it. And then we refused to go forward even when we had it, when we didn't have a definitive answer. So we asked for a definitive answer from an independent expert, an expert hired by the town, not by the applicant, by the town, to provide us with independent guidance, given the site's parameters, what would be a reasonable removal of sand and gravel in order to properly manage this site for development. They looked at the proposal of 350,000 cubic yards and said 20% less would be reasonable. The applicant has come back with a 22.9% reduction. I believe it would be inappropriate for me to substitute my amateur judgment for that of a licensed professional whom this board asked to provide that guidance. So I'm going to accept the professional guidance as the only evidence that I have in front of me. I've also looked at the requirements of 2032C4, which is the safety considerations for earth removal. That's something else that we're supposed to consider. Those requirements address protections for persons and property on and or adjacent to the site. Now, we've heard about all of the proposals in terms of we're going to raise the grade, we're going to provide for greater drainage, we're going to provide for independent drainage, we're going to do those things. That is certainly a reasonable safeguard for the site. It ensures separation of the water table, and it works to prevent impact on the neighbors. There's 300-foot buffers, 300-foot buffers required to create this property from the neighboring residences. That's a lot more than you normally get. Again, the requirement is that there only be 50 feet of separation. There's 300 plus feet of separation. As to traffic, there's no getting around it. Traffic in Cedarville is bad. For those who ask, yes, I'm in Cedarville on a multiple time a week basis. I travel all through it. I visit every site. I review everything. I meet with people down there when the residents have questions. I go to the residents. So I do go down there. And I do agree, traffic is bad. I'm going to ask Mr. D'Ambrosio if he'll step up for a moment. Mr. D'Ambrosio, one of the questions that was raised to me by a constituent in Cedarville, by a resident of Cedarville, was to point out that traffic there, as bad as it is many times, is particularly bad around 4 o'clock. Schools get out at 3:15. By the time it hits the bus lanes and all, it's about 4 o'clock. Your proposal proposes that operations occur between 7 and 4. Would your client be willing to reduce that to 7 to 3 to at least create a little bit of separation from the school time frame?
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, so I'm going to ask that that be included in anything. The proposed mitigation for Cedarville has been standing for quite some time. It's been a long time question. There's no easy answer. We've all talked about the fact that this intersects with State Road. State Road is a state road. We don't have unique and total control over that. Anything we do is going to require state assistance and certainly state approval. But one of the things the state doesn't want to do is give us money for it. The only way the traffic is going to be improved and the traffic flow is going to be improved is if the town provides money towards that. This is the first and only proposal that we have that does that. Now, we could turn around and say, oh, we're going to leave it and it's not going to happen, and somebody else can go ahead and say, fine, we're going to develop it and not give the town money. We can go ahead and fight that for all we want. But the question then becomes, do we want to get, in carrying out what we've been asked to carry out, which is the development of this parcel as a commercial parcel, that's what town meeting has directed. Do we want to do something that has a chance of improving traffic or not? This has been sitting for, as someone pointed out, 8 years. 8 years. It's not, the value is not the same. And I can tell you that $2 million is not going to get any more valuable if we wait another 2 or 3 years, or 4 or 5. So, following the directives of town meeting and based upon the guidance of both the town and independent professionals, I am going to follow the guidance of the statutes in rendering my opinion and my recommendation to the building inspector. Thank you. Anything further from any members of the board? Mr. Donaldson. Mr. Bennett?
No, I do have
Your mic.
Sorry. I do have some minor modifications to some of the conditions I'd like to see.
Okay.
If this is, I don't know if this is the appropriate time.
We can do that as part of any motion, or you can raise it now, and we can certainly discuss it. Yes, it's part of discussion if you'd like.
Okay, so condition number 11 says the petitioner shall provide an as-built survey which verifies no more than 270,000 cubic yards of material were removed. I'd like to just include the words that that should be certified by both a registered land surveyor and a registered civil engineer, so that their licenses are on the line, that that is the actual amount. I assume that that probably would have taken place anyway, but I'd like it in the record, please. Condition 17.
Mr. Bennett, could
Yes.
I got registered land surveyor, could you repeat the second?
Registered civil engineer.
Thank you.
Condition 17, under earth removal zoning permit, minimum conditions and safeguards, number 17, quarterly inspections and quarterly written certifications from a professional engineer shall be submitted to the building commissioner demonstrating substantial compliance. And I would like language inserted into that that says that a statement of the volume in cubic yards of material removed from the site be part of that quarterly report. What I'm getting at, just as an aside, is that we don't want this to get away from us. And I have confidence that Mr. Pontiff is going to excavate 270,000 cubic yards within the ability to calculate such a large number on the ground. But I'd just like to have some oversight along the way so that we don't get to a point where we're coming back and asking for forgiveness. So just to echo Mr. Bulletin's very eloquent comments, I feel that the 130 acres that were protected as part of this to create the Cedarville Village Enterprise District is in all honesty, a pretty good deal as far as how much is often given up in trade for a development. It's certainly no great shakes at math, but 30 out of 160 is a pretty good percentage to allow for development. So that's all.
May I ask a question?
Yes.
In regards to condition number 17, the last sentence, written certificates shall include tallies of earth removal to accurately determine the amount of gravel being removed. Would you like that modified?
Or having been removed to date?
To date, okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Gridley.
Yes, I do have a question on the report here. Is there a cash bond being put in place to protect the roads? I'm asking either staff or the proponent.
I'm sorry.
Who is going to determine the cash bond?
The building commissioner.
And he's going to determine that based on value of the road?
In coordination with the Department of Public Works.
Okay, so there will be a cash bond put in place?
That's correct.
Okay, not just a bond, a cash bond?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, with that, at this point, I'll entertain a motion to, let me ask, do we need to break this into two motions, one for the unified complex and one for the recommendation? Or do we do this as a single recommendation to advance the staff report with the comments and changes that have been made?
If it's the board's purview to recommend both to the building commissioner, you can do it as one.
Okay, at this point, I'll entertain a motion, however, at the pleasure of the board.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Is that a motion to approve both as
Both, yes.
as a recommendation to the building inspector?
Yes.
We have a motion to approve the staff recommendation with changes to the building inspector. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second. Any further discussion from the board? Seeing none, I will call the roll. Mr. Grandy.
Yes.
Mr. Donaldson.
Yes.
Mr. Bennett.
Yes.
Myself, yes. Next on our agenda this evening, I have ZBA 4142, Landers Farm Way, Landers Farm LLC, special permit required per section 205-18F to conduct earth removal in excess of 10 cubic yards. This is a special permit, so the planning board is advisory only to the ZBA on this matter.
Maybe just the plan would be good, yeah.
Unless anyone wants to take a 5-minute break. Unless you want to take a 5-minute break.
If you want.
Does anyone need a break? Okay.
Oh, thanks, man. Oh, cool. Are you ready for me?
Yeah.
Oh. Sorry,
All right, we're gonna resume, please. Folks, if you wish to carry on a conversation, please do it outside. We're going to continue with the next matter. Go ahead, Mr. D'Ambrosio.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sorry, kind of gather my wits here as I change gears. Rob D'Ambrosio, for the record, D'Ambrosio Law here in Plymouth. I'm here on behalf of Landers Farm LLC for a proposed project down the street from the one that you just heard off of Hedges Pond Road. We are, as was read into the record, my client is here seeking a special permit as directed by the building commissioner pursuant to a zoning denial. The special permit directed my client to seek a special permit to conduct earth removal in excess of 10 cubic yards. So again, on that last hearing, it was kind of alluded to, you know, under what circumstances does the ZBA potentially have jurisdiction over earth removal? In this case, the building inspector said, ZBA, we'd like you to take a look. So we are presenting to you in an advisory capacity to the ZBA, as you pointed out. I've got with me Skip Landers, the principal of the LLC, and Bill Madden, our civil engineer for the project. Bill will do a job if he could. I'd like to reserve some time for him to kind of run through the nuts and bolts of the project, but I'll give you a brief overview. So the site in question on Landers Farm Way, which was a subdivision, definitive subdivision approved in, I think, 2016, is a 130-acre parcel. It's 2 lots, but it's effectively one contiguous, commonly owned 130-acre parcel. It's an existing agricultural, it's in existing agricultural use. It's been farmed, that site's been farmed for over 100 years. There's 3 existing bogs on the site, and Mr. Landers is in the process of renovating, improving, and expanding the farming operation there. So in 2017, for instance, 4.5 acres of the existing bogs were renovated at substantial cost to using best management practices to increase yield, reduce water usage, et cetera. Now, the applicant is seeking to construct 2 new aspects on the property, roughly 9.25 acre new cranberry bog and a 6-acre tailwater recovery pond. Again, we're in the rural residential zoning district, so we're not in the Cedarville Village Enterprise District, not in that industrial district that we just were in for the last hearing. This is in the rural residential zoning district. In that zoning district, agriculture was a by right use. So again, we've got an existing agricultural use, long-standing agricultural use. They're active bogs. They've been in operation, like I said, for 100 years. They just harvested berries a couple months ago, and this is going to continue to be the use on site. I guess I will point out, I'll let Bill kind of give you chapter and verse on how these are being designed from an engineering standpoint, but again, as part of this overview, We did appear before the Cedarville Steering Committee. We heard objections, some similar to what were expressed tonight in the previous hearing, concerns about groundwater, concerns about traffic, et cetera. We're willing to, I've spoken with my client, we're willing to take a cut at reducing the amount of material coming off-site to reduce the perceived impact or the pressures on the neighborhood. Again, if you'd like to have us continue and come back, if that's the board's pleasure, we're happy to do so. Just want to be responsive and, take another cut at this if that's the board's pleasure. But with that, I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Madden to walk you through the project if he could.
Thanks, Rob. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I'm Bill Madden from GAF Engineering. I'm the engineer who prepared the earth removal permit application that you're currently reviewing. As Rob pointed out, I'm going to get used to this too, I guess. Okay. As Rob pointed out, this project really is it's an upgrade of an existing cranberry bog system. It's been in existence for roughly 100 years. The acreage that exists out there today is it's the original acreage, original vines, original bogs, very old. They're planted with older varieties. I think they're early blacks and hows. They're not tremendous yielding varieties and what have you. And one of the plans is to expand the cranberry bog acreage by 9¼ acres and eventually renovate the existing acreages there and planting it with the more high-yielding cultivars that are out there now that you see I see being planted in most instances. Another one of the features that we're looking to implement here is to create some type of water supply that's a little more substantial than what exists. We currently show a, let's see, we currently show about a 6-acre tailwater pond water supply reservoir. The feature with this one is that it's, we have to excavate a fair amount of slope to get down to the water table. The water table is roughly 40 feet below the surface of the ground. That's to the surface of the water table. We're showing another 9 feet into it. We would be looking to use that as our water supply and our tailwater recovery pond for the cranberry acreage. When you build newer acreage, the Water Management Act requires you to implement some best management practices. One is the implementation of tailwater recovery provisions. Tailwater recovery provisions are strictly a water conservation measure, and it's intended to really bring excess water, whether it's from irrigation, winter floods, harvest water, whatever, send it back to your tailwater pond for the purpose of reuse. So that was a big element of the project, and I think that was what Rob was suggesting. There was some discussion as to whether we could change that around a little bit, utilize the existing wells. There's 2 wells. There's one here and there's one here that provide the water to the cranberry bog system now. It's not the ideal situation. It really is kind of hard to put winter water on, for example, in any quick way. There's also a pump that's located right at this location here where the arrow is. That's to deliver water to one bog or the other, pump it from that section or pump it from it to another section or discharge water into that. So the whole goal would be to add on to this existing cranberry bog at the existing elevations. We're not changing any of the elevations of the bogs. They're all at the current elevation, which is roughly about elevation 70, 68, 69, 76. So those are the elevations that tie the project together. They're really the controlling features on the site. We want to retain the the layering that's underneath the cranberry bog system the way it is, but we do want to replant these eventually. And the new section, this new section here would be replanted, and I would expect the existing acreage to be replanted as well. We show another like 6.5 acre piece up to the west here, and that acreage plus this acreage here gives us about 9.25 acres of additional acreage on the site, with the inclusion of a water supply reservoir tailwater recovery pond. The site, as Rob indicated, it's 130 acres in total. There's 17.2 acres of cranberry bog there currently. We're looking to bring it to about 26 and a half, and provide that 6 acre pond. This property was all acquired by PA Landers, and Landers Farm operates it in 1991. So he's owned it for quite some time, operated it. It's in pristine condition for a site of this age. It's very well maintained and very, very well operated. But anyway, he purchased it some 30 some odd years ago, and now is at the point where they're hopeful to do a renovation to bring it up to current day standard and current day yields. One of the other things that they have over there is a farm plan. They have a farm plan from the USDA Natural Resource Conservation Service that was prepared in 2013. In that plan, they identified what their ultimate goals would be with the property. Those goals included some modest expansions. They thought they might do 20 to 25 acres of cranberry bog and say 5 to 10 acres of water supply reservoir. But as we got into looking at that and seeing what we could really fit in here onto the site, it didn't seem that we could get the acreage that they were looking for. And this is really what we feel comfortable with the yield on the project. It's really, the earth removal is a transitional land use. The transition being the excavation of the bulk excavation material, so we can bring it down to an elevation that we can actually construct the cranberry bog. We call it transitional because it is transitioning. There is a period of construction that's going to take place from today and hopefully till sometime in tomorrow, 5, 6, 8 years, whatever the time frame is to construct. But what we do have is a situation where the facility, as it exists here today, has been there for over 100 years, and we would expect that once this is complete, it would remain in place for an additional 100 years at least, and it would be providing a higher degree of yield, more cranberries per year, in a more modern type setting that they have. I put a plan together just to give everybody an idea of, did that color photograph, did that get over to you by any chance today? That somebody sent? Maybe not. That would be the one. We've got a little rotation issue, but I think that we can all deal with that. The way, unless you could rotate it for me, kindly. Okay, I'm sorry. Great, thank you, appreciate it. I just pulled this plan together just to give an overview of what this looks like in context with the surrounding land use areas. You can see that over to the east of this property, there's a couple of hundred house lots, a couple of miles of roadways, things of that nature. There's a it's not very dense, it's a fairly nice subdivision. This is our site. These are the 3 existing bogs. The green line indicates the boundaries of the 130 acres. The lower piece of cranberry bog acreage down here, that was the Janine Anderson site that was done in the early 2000s. You might recall that, it was a number of years ago that we were here that we presented this plan, but in any event, that was done as part of a larger plan. And back in 2008, we were asked by the planning board and the zoning board to prepare a comprehensive plan of everything that was going to be done between the Landers Farm site and the Anderson site. And we prepared a plan that showed the development of the Anderson site coupled with the development of the Landers Farm site. So this has some long history with it as far as what was asked for in the past for us to provide. But in any event, there's some linkage between the two. The access to the site does not enter into the residential subdivision at all. There is an access way from number 61. There's that little angular driveway that provides the site access to, say, for the bog manager or somebody that isn't running through the cranberry acreage below. That's where that would be taking place. The other access for the site, which we have the other access, I'll just use this image down here. It's the existing site from the Anderson property. Landers Farm required an easement from Anderson that gives them access from Hedges Pond Road all the way up into Landers Farm, so there's no need to go through the residential subdivision with anything. In fact, we've excluded that from any consideration with this project. So there's the access that we're talking about here. It's going to follow the access road right by that arrow around the end of this small pond there and go up the slope and access into the site in that area. From just about this corner here, right across the site to this corner, there's no activity proposed in that area. That area was a little closer to the few houses that exist that really abut the property. And there's also a municipal well that's located right here, and there's a Zone 2 that's associated with that. There's no excavation allowed within the Zone 2. The Zone 2 cuts across this northerly, I'll call it the northerly portion of the site, and that's to remain as it currently is, as in an undisturbed state. We did maintain 100-foot setbacks from the property lines with any excavation that was proposed to take place. And how do I get back? How do I get back to the other thing? First tab.
Go up to the top, over to the right a little, up, left.
Oh, this one here.
Yeah, that's it, yeah. Don't, not the X, not the X.
That would exit out?
Just on that.
Just click it?
Left click, yeah.
Okay. So as far as the plans show, this is the overview that shows things. This is the breakdown of how things are to be developed on a phase-by-phase basis. We were asking for some relief on the 5-acre phasing. On a project of this magnitude, this size, 5 acres is a little difficult to work with. We were able to obtain that waiver for the Anderson project, which is down to the south. But that's what the tailwater pond would look like. That's the configuration of it. There's some sloping that runs from the electric easement, the east side of the electric easement down to a site access road that wraps around that reservoir. The cranberry bog that's proposed up in the, I guess we were saying that was the easterly side of the site, southeasterly. We're looking at think that was 7.5 acres to be constructed in that area. And we do have some excavation that'll occur against the property line and very minor amounts of excavation that are going to occur adjacent to the lots of the residential subdivision. So there's really very minor amount of work that's going to occur over there. This illustrates the expansion of the existing Cranberry Bog section by a couple of acres. And this final plan just indicates the details of construction, the erosion control, the outlets, the outlet pipes that are delivering water back to the tailwater pond, the Cranberry Bog cross sections, some drainage at the toe of the slopes, a flume structure, little collection swale at the bottom of a slope, and the loam and seeding detail that is proposed to stabilize all the disturbed areas at the completion of the work, or once those slopes are complete. Our objective would be to try to get the slopes completed and vegetated first, and then do the excavation for the reservoir, followed by excavations for the Cranberry Bog acreage. This is the image of the truck route, how we're gonna access the site, how we're gonna leave the site and enter the site. This is the route, this is the route where we're entering into Hedges Pond Road. Let's see, where the heck are we? Right down here, and that's where we get onto Hedges Pond Road and come up to State Road. So the intersection of State Road and Hedges Pond Road is where the truck traffic will be directed. I think everything was proposed to be headed to a southerly direction, keep it out of the developed areas, keep it out of Cedarville, so to speak, and try to route it as quickly as possible to the main transportation route of Route 3. Let's see. That's pretty much it when it comes to the project. It's, we looked at the town master plan. The town master plan from 2024 didn't have too many negatives about it. They do consider cranberry acreage, historic landscapes. This certainly could be considered that, given the age of the site. We also have all of our water withdrawal permits in place. It's fully permitted. There's a fire plan, there's a forestry management plan, there's a Water Management Act permit. So we'd like to think that we're in fairly good shape permitting-wise with respect to the required permits and documentation to operate the project. And as I say, it's really a transitional land use going from cranberries to cranberries. And I'm happy to answer any questions you might have with respect to our proposal.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. D'Ambrosio, anything further at this point, or?
Yeah, briefly, yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, there's, one remark that I kind of jotted down and I should have mentioned is, we've got a lot of people stuck around, as I'd expect them to if you're local to Cedarville or have an interest in Cedarville from the last hearing. And I think, it's worthwhile to just kind of delineate or compare this project to the one that was just discussed. To the extent that there was concern about, heavy commercial use, warehousing, traffic, intensity of use, this is kind of the polar opposite. Once this is constructed, you've got about as passive and benign of a use as you could possibly envision, particularly for a site of this size. So again, you've got a cranberry bog. Everyone here is familiar, or most people, I think, are familiar with cranberry bog operation. It's quite passive. You have, seasonal work. There's a flurry of activity in the fall, but, by and large, it's open space for all intents and purposes. And again, this is about 3 to 4 times the size of the site we just evaluated, or this board just evaluated for 71 Hedges Pond. So again, when you think about what could be or compare it to other uses, this is not a bad outcome. I understand the disruption that people fear during the movement of material, But, as Bill pointed out, that's transitional. The bogs will then be there forever, and this is agricultural. You can't fill a bog and turn it into something else once it's wetland. So, again, I think it's a good end use, and, again, compare it to the other use. And for that matter, we're rural residential. If this were to be something else, it would be residential. That's the other alternative for a site like this. So again, when you worry about traffic, density, what goes into the groundwater, I think Mr. Bennett touched upon, what you're concerned about with groundwater separation from septic systems. That's the alternative for a site like this in the rural residential zone is residential. So again, I understand the concern about earth removal, but in terms of a use, I think it's a home run of a use, in my opinion, for those reasons. Thank you.
Thank you. We're not doing comment right now. Actually, you know what, I will. I'll let, as the applicant, you can go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much, appreciate it.
Further
I just neglected to speak about dust control on the site. Dust control is going to be, there's a dust management plan that's included in the application. Dust control would be handled by a water truck on the site. You need a water truck really during full operation, during any trucking activities, from the excavation point all the way down to Hedges Pond Road. That's the only way to keep that dust under control, is to keep it down and damp. But, if you go out there and look around, there is quite a bit of other off-site sources of dust that could be generated, that could be disruptive to some. I think that we can manage the dust on the site properly. Has to be done that way. There's really no other way to that. And as far as construction of the bogs, all construction activities are going to be done pursuant to the UMass Cranberry Station guidance that they've put out. All cranberry cross sections and what have you are designed with confining layers, and a slowly permeable confining layer, an organic layer, a planting layer, and what have you. And all that material, all that water is really retained on the cranberry bog and returned back to our tailwater pond. If we are to put an elevated tailwater pond in, it will be a lined pond substantially above the water table, and I would say that would be in excess of 5 feet above the water table, more likely between 5 and 10.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We bring it back to staff.
Thank you. So in 2018, staff, we had an ad hoc gravel committee, earth removal committee. The planning board and ultimately town meeting approved a stronger, strengthened gravel removal, earth removal bylaw. The property owner here, prior to town meeting action, filed a subdivision plan using really liberal laws that we have in Massachusetts to protect themselves, and they froze the zoning under the old zoning. So this proposal is subject to the old bylaw, not the new bylaw that we have in place today. The request here is to remove 2,007,086 cubic yards of gravel. And I just thought it was important to just go over the history of this site. Mr. Madden referred to this and the abutting site. They separate owners, but they were all kind of related and discussed throughout the years. So in 2002, a special permit was granted for first phase of the projects out here for a little over 500,000 cubic yards of gravel. In 2004, they came back with another proposal. The ZBA asked them to withdraw it. They raised another number of questions. So that one was withdrawn. In 2005, they came back seeking another permit, and it was granted by the ZBA for another 580,000 cubic yards of gravel. And again, these are in that Anderson Bog area. In 2005, from what I can see, they had something that shows on different plans as phase 2. An additional 438,000 cubic yards of gravel were removed. I do not see how that was approved. I do see in 2009, when they came back for another phase of their project, the ZBA case acknowledges that removal, so I can only assume that it was said, well, it was done and we'll just move on. But that 2009 case was for a little over 1 million cubic yards of gravel. 2010, they came in and asked to do 2 wind turbines on the Anderson property, and that was withdrawn. They came back in 2012 to do 1 200-foot wind turbine. That was approved, but the permit has expired, and that was never constructed. And then in 2019, they came in for a special permit to the ZBA to construct a 3-megawatt ground-mounted photovoltaic system that was going to be put on the side slope of the property. And they came back, the building commissioner had determined that they could move that from the side slope as a field change onto where the cranberry bogs were supposed to go in the previous phase that was where the earth was removed for cranberry bogs, and instead they did the solar field. And then in 2020, the building commissioner, as we were reviewing as-built plans, the former building commissioner, not the current one, we identified that 110,000 cubic yards of excess gravel was removed as part of the project, and he authorized that as a field change and said that that was okay. So that's just a history of what's happened there. So in total, up until today, we're talking about a little under 3 million cubic yards of gravel that was removed by the petitioner. And in all those cases, they did donate 10 cents a cubic yard of gravel to the town for road maintenance, and that money was collected. So the old bylaw says extractive industries are allowed by special permit through the Zoning Board of Appeals. But it references the section of the bylaw for 205-18D. And that section says every effort shall be taken to maintain the continuity of natural topography. The design shall be cited, and again, this is the old bylaw, to fit naturally into the topography rather than radically altering the bylaw, rather than altering the topography. And so, as we look at this, and I could go into the whole report, but I think it's pretty obvious that the proposal to really radically alter 70 acres of land for just a little more than 9 acres of cranberry bogs really does not fit in the intent of that bylaw. And also, as you can see from some of the photographs that were up there, this is in close proximity to a number of homes. When you look at over the time period, they're talking 6 to 8 years to do the project. When you look at the estimate for truck trips, we're talking about round trips, 74, or one-way trips, almost 150,000 truck trips that would happen as part of this project. So again, we think that this is well in excess of anything that we've ever seen or discussed as reasonable. Staff is recommending that the board render a negative determination or recommendation for denial to the Zoning Board of Appeals. You are advisory to the ZBA. We can't predict what they might do, so we did include a number of conditions at the end that do note that should the ZBA disagree with staff or the planning board, assuming you support our recommendation, that we did give them some guidance for some conditions that they might want to consider. But again, 2 million cubic yards to construct 9 acres of cranberry bogs, we think doesn't make sense, and it does not respect the topography in any way of the existing topography. So again, you have our report, and we're recommending that you issue a recommendation for denial to the Zoning Board of Appeals. Thank you.
Thank you. Normally, we go to public comment, but in this instance, I'm going to ask that we have the board speak first and address any concerns and then we will go to public comment after that. So I'm going to open it up to the board for questions and comments first. I'm going to start, Mr. Donaldson, and if you could.
I have no comments at this moment. I'm okay with the recommendations from, no, actually I'm okay with hearing from the public.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Donaldson. Mr. Bennett?
Well, if Mr. Grandy is amenable to it, I'd like to hear his comments first, because he's certainly a lot more eloquent than I, and I think that he's probably going to cover most of what I would have to say, if that's okay with you, Mr.
That's
Chairman.
certainly fine. Always defer. Mr. I'll defer to Mr. Bennett's judgment.
Okay, quickly, I'm just going to say that I agree with the Director of Inspectional Services, as far as him also suggesting to the planning board for denial for this particular project. And I am in support of the recommendations in the report by the planning staff recommending denial. And I will not go into every single item here because there is a few, but to me, this is definitely not fitting for this particular area and this particular piece of property. So that's where I am.
Thank you, Mr. Grandy. I'm going to echo a lot of what was said by Mr. Hartman in talking about this site. The site is currently 17 acres of cranberry bogs. Applicant is seeking to remove over 2 million cubic yards, in addition to the almost 3 million that's already been removed from the site. The stated purpose for doing this is to redevelop 5 acres of cranberry bogs and add an additional 5 more acres of bogs and a 6-acre tailwater recovery pond. So the project site is 130 acres, of which 17 are bogs. 17 are already bogs. And we've heard that the site is in pristine condition. Well, not after this project takes place, it wouldn't be. We're told by the application that the 2 million cubic yard removal is, and I'm going to quote, required in connection with the construction of the project, close quote. That's from the application. But there's nothing provided in all of the documentation that supports that statement. The proposed work would disturb 70 acres, that's more than half the entire site, closely adjacent to residential properties. Changes in topography of 20 to 80 feet will occur. 20 to 80 feet. Not all of that is associated with the depth of the tailwater recovery pond, but rather with other topography on the site. As Mr. Hartman mentioned, even the old bylaw made it clear that topography should be respected when doing these types of projects. This proposal does not respect the topography. And again, this is to create an additional 9 acres of cranberry bogs. 9 acres. And that's assuming that the bogs are ever actually built. As staff has noted, there's no guarantee that additional bogs will ever be built, and prior permits for bogs had been issued and bogs weren't built. So sand and gravel was removed, but the ultimate end use wasn't necessarily accomplished. So the applicant has provided no technical information establishing the scope of the disturbance or the scope of the removal is necessary. In contrast, the inspectional services report that we've received has indicated that given the proposed scope of the work and the design, it appears that the primary purpose of the project is sand and gravel removal, not agriculture. And beyond the disturbance of the site itself, there's the issue of disruption to the community. We've spent a lot of time talking about traffic in Cedarville. The applicant is proposing a three-phased project, which, if you look at their application, is 7 to 10 years. 7 to 10 years during which they will be removing all of this sand and gravel. 55 vehicle trips per day, 40 of which will be trucks removing sand and gravel. That would be in an area that is completely ill-equipped to address that kind of volume. It's one thing to say, okay, we're going to have a commercial use at an adjacent site. And we will have a commercial use at an adjacent site if that's what ends up being built there. But that's to be managed. There's nothing managing this. This would be overkill to that site. So given the information provided, comparing the scope of the work to the end result and the impact on the community, I don't see how the proposed removal is necessary for construction of the bog. I don't see how creation of additional bogs would be considered the primary purpose of this project, and I don't see how this project would not present an undue disruption and safety hazard to the community. So for those reasons, I also will be supporting the staff report for recommendation of denial. to the ZBA. With that said, now I'm going to open this up for public comment. Oh, excuse me, Mr. Bennett, if you want to go back to your points, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a few things that I think most of my colleagues on the board here have already stated that I agree with is, number one, the construction of a tailwater recovery pond, or traditionally known in old-fashioned bogs as a reservoir, it kind of suggests to me that maybe this isn't the appropriate place to build cranberry bogs if you have to build the reservoir also. The other question, this is kind of a rhetorical question, but I wonder what is the anticipated payback period for this project? I can't imagine making this level of an investment without having some idea of how long it would take to recoup the funds spent on it through the cranberry sales. My gut tells me that the payback period on the sale of cranberries is longer than my lifetime, at least. And that suggests to me that this really is a pretense for extracting the sand, which is obviously, we all know, valuable. Unlike the 71 Hedges Pond project, Hedges Pond Road project, which we just recommended approval, I don't see any public benefit here. I saw tremendous benefit, public benefit, and economic benefit on 71 Hedges Pond. The only benefit I see here is to the landowner, which I'm definitely a capitalist, and I feel that private property rights are what our economic system is built on, and if they own the land, they should have the right to maximize its potential. But I think in this case, the potential for, although I'm not convinced as to whether the science is there yet on the interception of the groundwater for a tailwater recovery pond, I do have some discomfort with the construction of those. And just to run back to the natural features conservation, where, and I'm going to repeat, I think, what Mr. Hartman said, is that the zoning states that efforts shall be taken to maintain the continuity of the natural topography. And natural topography does not come in rectangles, like we're seeing this cranberry bog design. Now, I understand that the new modern way of growing cranberry bogs, and for efficiency, they make them in rectangles to make them easier to irrigate or whatever it may be, but that's not what our zoning says. It says that cut and fill should be avoided in all instances possible, and structure shall be designed and sited to fit naturally into the topography rather than radically altering the topography. So for those reasons, I'm not going to be in favor of this project.
Thank you, Mr. Bennett. Okay, at this point, having heard now staff recommendations and the board's position, does anyone wish to make public comment? Okay, gentleman first, and then you.
I'm not sure about the record, but my comments before, I thought, it was my mistake, I thought we were discussing this project. I think you picked up on my misconception, and I thank you for that.
I understand.
And I'm an economist, so I look at things a little bit differently than public sector. But I'm pleased to hear the comments that are going on here tonight. They're very much in line with what I do feel for this beautiful community that we have. And as I drive around and I see all these different excavations going on, I go back into my history and I look at what happened in Appalachia, West Virginia, some Tennessee, where a lot of strip mining was going on that left communities really devastated past the tenure of the people who made the decisions to let that happen. And I would like all of us to be able to take a step back and make sure that we don't allow that to happen to our area. And I feel that the thinking of the board right now is moving in that direction, for which I'm grateful. Thank you.
Thank you.
also am happy with the way that the discussion is going. I almost hesitate to mention, but there was just one point I wanted to bring up, and I think you were talking about it, Mr. Bennett, with the retention pond, tail pond, whatever it's called. They'd mentioned that being lined. Anything that's lined leaks. Talk to Florida, talk to, again, Appalachia. Whatever's in that pond, it's 5 feet above the water table, and it leaks, there goes the water table. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. On this issue, I'm happy with the way the board has expressed their view for the reasons primarily of the bylaws governing gravel removal, and those should be adhered to. But to be fair, I'm also a property owner, and I am, certainly feel strongly about property owners' rights, and the landers have an opportunity to exercise their property rights. I don't think it's the purview of the town to consider what the payoff period is for any one person's project. Individual businessmen can make those decisions for themselves. It's not the purview of the town to decide whether something's going to be profitable or not. Having said that, yeah, I'm against this, I think, for the same reasons that most of the folks behind me are against it. So I thank you for your indication of denial. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Now that I have my bearings, I'd like to echo the comments about confusion. First of all, when I came up here, I stated there are just simply a number of sand gravel mining operations happening in the area. It could be a bit problematic to stay on top of all that. Personally speaking, I know that there's another proposed development literally right across the street from where we live. That is very problematic for a number of reasons. A, we moved here for a high quality of life. B, we live in a very beautiful area. C, our groundwater is literally coming from right beneath us, and that's where the proposed project is, across the street from us as well. So all things considered, I am happy with the direction in which this decision was made on the latest matter being raised. However, I think it's worth really looking at this in aggregate. I spent some time looking on my phone, looking up you all individually, understanding your backgrounds. Each one of you mentions project management, and that likely leads to why you are here on a planning board. Now, taking all these things into consideration, if we have 40 trucks on one site one day, multiply that by 2 with coming in and out for one project, that'll get multiplied with the other project going on, and then if there's a third project that happens as well, or any number thereof on State Road, all of the considerations for traffic are just multiplied, and I really just request that as people in your profession, with project management being at the forefront of your specialty, that you are considering all these projects as a whole. With that, I yield my time. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Pat Adelman. I'm a member of the Cedarville Steering Committee, and the committee voted 5-0 not to recommend this project. The landers, if you just Google it, you'll find out that they're not in agriculture, they're in earth removal. We asked at one of the meetings how much their cranberries produced, and we were told $100,000. So they're removing $58 million plus worth of gravel for a $100,000 operation. I question the agricultural use. We also objected to the project because of the neighbors talked about the the vibrations and the noise that they now hear because the hills are gone. And again, it's near a recreational, it's near Hedges Pond Recreation Center. There are a lot of kids driving back and forth on bikes. And the truck traffic, Cedarville has traffic, but this excavation trucks, they're really hazardous to the road, and that's not a regular flat road, it's a steep hill. And for all those reasons, the Cedarville Steering Committee voted against this. Thank you.
Thank you. You would ask, Ms. Sheehan, you would ask to speak?
Yes, I corroborate what the earlier speaker said about taking a holistic and cumulative look at all of this. As you may know, I have studied sand and gravel mining in this town for over 10 years, and I have watched time after time after time permits coming out of this board and this committee that are never enforced. We've brought innumerable requests for enforcement to enforce permits that are granted, to enforce the bylaw that prohibits industrial scale sand and gravel mining. The town acts like lopping off a hill at Pine Hills is simply normal land development. It is not. We've documented 110 sites in this region, almost 50 of them in Plymouth, sand and gravel mines that are permitted, some not permitted, some under the rules of agriculture, some under the rules of a unified complex like on Route 3 with some vague promise of a manufacturing building. So I really don't see how you can separate this project from the Hedges Road project and then sit here and tell people that, if Mr. Pontiff wants to change from an ice skating rink to an Amazon warehouse, he has to come back here and get approval from us. Well, we know that'll just be another rubber stamp. We're watching this go on all over the place, and I have people calling me. I contact the planning board. They can't give any reason why that mine on Route 3 is still operating with an expired permit. There are 7 new sand and gravel mining projects proposed in Plymouth and Carver, $133 million worth of sand and gravel in 1 year in 2024. There are 2,500 acres that have been strip mined around here in the last 30 years, 110 sites, 75% of that is agriculture. This project, Mr. Lander's project, is an egregious misrepresentation. To stand up here and say that this is incidental agriculture is offensive in the extreme, and I would note that Mr. Landers, I know he's sitting right behind me, but I'm sure we all know that he spent time in federal prison and his company was fined $3 million under the False Claims Act in connection with sand mining operations that the federal government said defrauded the state of Massachusetts and municipalities. So whether it's the Plymouth Foundation and their shady deals with the town over funneling land to the Plymouth Foundation to do sand and gravel mining.
That's 3 minutes.
Well, it's about time for a moratorium on sand and gravel mining in this town and a cumulative assessment of the damage that this board and others have allowed to occur.
Three minutes applied to the last one, just for the record. In addition to that,
No,
you should be embarrassed. You
three
should be
minutes-
embarrassed for trying to belittle people for just speaking about what they care about.
Excuse
So you
me,
know what? Come
three-
down off your high horse. I gotta go. But get over yourself.
Hi, my name's Joyce. I do not live in Section 8. I have a question, or maybe it's rhetorical. We talk about these big trucks, and I know what these big dump trucks are like. I lived in Situate during the time they had the cement pipe industry going on there, and I know what it does to the roads. It's horrible. And 3A, which I live on, is not great. It's not horrible yet. It will become horrible because of those big trucks. And as a statement you said earlier, you said 3A is a state road. It has state implications and laws to it. So when that road is totally destroyed with giant potholes, who's going to fix it? Ah, okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just wanted to thank the members of the board for so clearly stating your thoughts, and I'm going to reserve most of my commentary for the ZBA meeting, which is the decision-making authority. That's correct?
That is correct.
Do you happen to know when that meeting is, and you can share with the audience?
We will find out.
Thank you.
Jerry Williams, Precinct 8. I live in Cedarville, and I am a town meeting representative. I thank you for your serious consideration of this project and looking at the various inputs. I hope that this kind of thoughtful procedure continues and that we look at, as Ms. Sheehan said, overall, all the projects that are being recommended for the town. I'm so glad that you're not recommending this, and I will also be at the ZBA meeting. But I'd like to just kind of make it very clear that we have already approved one project that will have 40 trucks a day going up and down our street for 4 years at least, 2 to 4 years. And this project would have put another 40 trucks out the same streets for up to 8 to 10 years. And so this is really onerous. And I come from a community where we had a lot of sand and gravel trucks driving through our community, and people on just one day, there were 2 fatal car accidents involving sand and gravel trucks, in which a mother and young child were killed and a young school teacher. So people say, oh, they're safe, they're innocuous, but they're not. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. The ZBA hearing on this matter is scheduled for December 16th. Anyone else wishing to speak? Okay. Online?
Catherine Harrelson, please unmute yourself.
Hi, thank you for taking my call. I appreciate it. My name is Catherine Harrelson. I'm with Community Land and Water Coalition, a Plymouth-based nonprofit organization. I'd just like to offer some quick calculations that support the planning board's conclusion that the primary use of this project is sand and gravel removal and not cranberry production. We can use numbers that are readily available online, such as numbers for the sand price from a local seller of sand and gravel located in southeastern Massachusetts, who's currently pricing sand sales at $16.25 per cubic yard. Again, this is an estimate, but I think that the numbers will show that the revenue potential generated from the sand and gravel removal far exceeds that of the cranberry production. Phase 1 of this project is $1.4 million cubic yards of sand. Phase 2, 176,000. Phase 3, 349,000. Total earth removal from this project is going to be over 2 million cubic yards of sand. If we use an average price of sale of $16.25, this is a potential revenue of over $32 million from this project for the sale of the sand. If the project life is between 7 and 10 years, if we take an average of 8.5 years, there's a potential for $3.8 million per year of revenue generated from the sale of the sand from this project. If we look at numbers for cranberry sales from the USDA Massachusetts cranberries, which gives yield, price per barrel and yields per acre for cranberries in Massachusetts for the year 2022. If we look at section 1, 2, 3, and 4, new bog acreage between 2.39 acres and 4.93 acres. The Massachusetts cranberry price average in 2022 in Massachusetts was $37 per barrel, and it provides a yield of barrels per acre. If we look at that projected annual revenue for the cranberries from this project, it averages about $150,000 per year. Therefore, it would take 216 years of cranberry production to equal the sale of sand and gravel from the site. Again, I support the planning board's conclusion that the primary purpose of this project is sand and gravel removal and not cranberry production. Thank you.
Thank you.
Tess Brennan.
Hi. I'll be very civil. I'm Tess Brennan. I'm in Precinct 12. I'm town meeting member. I'm also on the Cedarville Steering Committee. I would just like to point out to the board that many of the reasons they have given for denying the Landers proposal also applied to the Pontiff project. Having said that, I would also like to say to the people in the audience and to the town of Plymouth, and especially to the residents of Cedarville, this ain't over till it's over, because there's still the ZBA to rule on this, and the Director of Inspectional Services, who seems to have an extraordinary amount of power in deciding these issues. So stay tuned. Don't become complacent. Thank you.
Thank you.
I know this is online. Can we get a printout of what was said here? Because I didn't bring a pen and pencil. Can we get a printout of the meeting?
So the meeting would be available. So we have minutes, which is not a word for word, but we will have minutes in a few weeks. But this is available on PAC TV, the whole recording.
On what TV?
PAC TV, our local TV. What do you call yourself
The
now?
local scene.
Local scene.
Local, so if I went onto my computer and went to Local Scene Plymouth, I could pick it up?
Yep.
Perfect, thank you.
YouTube.
Yep. They have a YouTube channel. They have a YouTube channel that will have all of the recordings. No TikTok yet. I don't see anybody else online. Anyone else? No? Okay, at this point then, I'm going to bring it back to the board, and I'll entertain a motion at this time.
Motion to recommend to the Zoning Board of Appeals denial based on staff's reports and everything in the documents we received this evening.
I have a motion to recommend denial. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, I will call the roll. Mr. Donaldson?
Yes.
Mr. Bennett?
Yes.
Mr. Grandy?
Yes.
And myself, yes. Is there any further new business for the planning board? Seeing none.
Motion to adjourn.
I have a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Donaldson?
Yes.
Mr. Bennett?
Yes.
Mr. Grandy?
Yes.
Myself, yes. Planning board is adjourned.
Wall Street Journal.